To the University of Notre Dame now, where we are joined by American Studies professor Robert Schmuhl, an expert on U.S. politics. And Professor Schmuhl, thanks for being with us again on the Harvest Show. Bob, I want to start off with the Republican side of this election. There are 16 candidates running, but if you watch the nightly news, it seems there's only one. What is the fascination with Donald Trump?
Well, Donald Trump is a fascinating figure in his own right, and I think that what you see in him is the merging of someone who's been successful in business and someone who is a huge celebrity. And what he's tapping into is the anger and the frustration that many people are feeling in this country today. And I was writing something the other day, and I referred to him as a major league capitalist, and Bernie Sanders, the Democrat who's running against Hillary Clinton, as a minor league socialist. They are both harvesting, if you'll forgive that word, votes from the same thinking communities. And by that I mean those who are angry and frustrated at the way that politics is being played in this country. With Donald Trump, it is a frustration on the right. With Bernie Sanders, it is a frustration on the left.
Many people thought that when this election began, the favorites would be Jeb Bush on the Republican side, Hillary Clinton on the Democratic side. Is that still the case?
Oh, I think if you're betting, and I doubt that you are, and I certainly am not at this point, but in terms of the quality of the campaign, in terms of the money that has already been raised, I think you have to look at both of them quite seriously. The question, though, that I would pose is, Americans ready for a replay, sort of a Groundhog Day experience that we had in 1992, which was a Bush, a Clinton, and then a popular independent. And that would be Donald Trump in place of Ross Perot. We forget that back in 1992, that Ross Perot gathered 19% of the vote. A lot of the polls right now are showing that Donald Trump is getting about 19–20% of the voters approving of his candidacy.
That has to be a tremendous concern, and it is for the Republican side. They don't really know what to do with Trump. They fear that he will run as an independent. On the other hand, they really don't seem in the establishment to want him as part of the Republican Party. How do they handle this diplomatically?
Very carefully. I don't know that you really know how to handle him. And by that I mean, just look back about 10 days ago when Donald Trump said what he did about John McCain not being a war hero. There were a number of commentators who said, by saying that, he has made himself an impossible candidate. He cannot go forward. He has insulted the Republicans to such an extent that his campaign is over. And more recent polls have showed that he has either stayed the same or improved his standing. So I don't think you can predict future Donald Trump in the campaign is actually going to mean.
Professor Schmuhl, you mentioned earlier that Trump has kind of tapped in, so has Bernie Sanders, to this frustration of politics as usual with people. But we've talked about this on the show before. When it comes to tossing people out, everybody says, okay, I'm dissatisfied with Congress, I'm dissatisfied with the government, but everybody tends to re-elect their own person and point the fingers at other people. You can't really do that with the President of the United States. So what are people looking for? What qualities are they looking for in a President of the United States?
That's a very good question, because I think that when you look at certain candidates, let's just pick Hillary Clinton as one. Most recently, the public opinion surveys have shown that the public in general doesn't find her trustworthy or honest. Well, forgive me, but I would consider those qualities to be essential in a democratic small d leader, especially one who would be in charge of the United States of America. So that I think what we're seeing right now, and let's always remember, this is the middle of summer. It's often called the silly season because real news isn't happening and journalists are trying to find ways to produce programs and write copy for publications and websites and all that. What you need to remember is that this is at the very, very beginning. And Donald Trump is catnip. What he says is colorful. What he says, as we've said before, taps into that frustration and that anger. He's a no-risk choice right now. But as we move into next year and the nominating process and then ultimately the election in November of 2016, the people will focus and they'll become serious and they'll say, what is it right now that we need? The problem, as I would view it, with someone like Hillary Clinton is she is so much the insider. And if you look back in recent American history, we have been selecting outsiders to be president. Barack Obama was an outsider, George W. Bush an outsider, Bill Clinton an outsider, Ronald Reagan an outsider. So I think she has that to contend with. And where the Republicans go, if they go in the direction of Jeb Bush, that's someone who hasn't been in office for almost a decade. That's someone who certainly carries the name that cuts both ways with the American public, which makes it possible that you would see one of the younger candidates, a Marco Rubio, a Ted Cruz, a Scott Walker, a Rand Paul, emerge. And in most cases, we would refer to them as outsiders. Well, and that's something to watch over the next several months.
And you brought up a name that has the lead right now in Iowa, where that first caucus is, and that's Scott Walker. He's somebody that a lot of Americans really aren't that familiar with, governor of Wisconsin. Can somebody like a Walker or a Rubio, one of those four names that you mentioned, can a dark horse emerge from this Republican field?
Yes, I certainly think so. And I think that one of the reasons that we see so many candidates, and you said the 16 or even 17 or 18 that are ultimately going to be running, the reason we see that is that, one, the Republicans have a much longer and stronger bench than the Democrats. The second reason is that ever since the shift from Harry Truman to Dwight Eisenhower, you've seen the White House flip back and forth after 2 terms. In the case of Jimmy Carter to Ronald Reagan, just 1 term. But it's been shifting from Democrat to Republican to Democrat. What the candidates that we're talking about, Scott Walker is a very good example, they're waiting for lightning to strike. They're waiting for the moment that would define them in the American public's mind, and people would say, you know, that person has a real sense and a vision where this country can go. I'm not saying it's going to be Scott Walker. That's not my point.
No.
But one of those candidates is expecting that to happen.
Well, Professor Bob Schmuhl from the University of Notre Dame, we thank you for your expertise. We also thank you for helping us test out our new S2 satellite truck here at LeSEA Broadcasting. It seems to be working just fine. We appreciate it. Hopefully we'll catch up with you as the election season goes on. That's Bob Schmuhl.
Chuck, the real reason I'm at Notre Dame is to check on your diploma.
And many suggest that you should have done that long time ago, but I think the statute of limitations is out on that now. Thank you very much. Professor Bob Schmuhl from the University of Notre Dame. When we return, there are some people that say America has become a nation of victims, but James Ward wants to see us go to a zero victim mentality. We'll talk with the pastor from Chicago when the Harvest Show returns after this.